Today on Alvarez TV, we're talking about torrefaction, a subject that has been talked about quite a bit by all sorts of wonderful luthiers. However, we're going to try and give you a little bit more information, especially on the oven itself and what it does. We've also made 3 guitars. One is unbaked, one is baked at 95, one is baked at 150 degrees Celsius. We're going to play those to see if we can hear the differences.
Nice one.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hi guys.
We haven't made a show for ages, have we?
No, it's been a while actually.
It's been a while.
And I'm looking forward to this one because this has been in the planning for some time.
Actually, several of them have, because we had to make, because people ask these questions and it's like, that's a great question. We'll have to go and make some guitars to prove that point.
Yeah, and we're in a very wonderful and unique position to be able to do stuff like that, which is very cool.
Lucky. It's a bit lucky, yeah. But so this week, we're talking about torrefaction, which I know has been talked about a lot. Mm-hmm. And as we always do on popular subjects, is trying to find twist, a little more information, maybe something that people maybe didn't know. Yeah. All that sort of stuff. You made 3 guitars, you talked to... Yeah,
yes, we made 3 guitars.
Rustled them up.
Yes, so just to give you a bit of background, the guitars are identical. They're all MD 60s. But this one has not been baked at all. This is a 0. And the one you've got, I think, might be 95, and the one in the middle here is 150. And these two are slightly different. They look different, and there's a reason for that.
So that one hasn't been in a thermal kiln. So just to say, we do cure all of our tops. Anything, it all depends where they came from, if there was any processing done before they came to us. Did we, buy lumber? Did we buy already processed tops? Sometimes we do. So we buy in all different ways. Yeah. They come in anything from 6 to 12 months generally for the wood on the guitars. Things like rosewood fingerboards, ebony fingerboards, etc. could be kept for a very long time. In Yairi, we have stuff there which is being kept for years and obviously, as you know, decades. But on the lower price point guitars, like everybody in the world, you accelerate your processing times, which is drying. Wood comes in, it's very wet.
Mm-hmm.
Got all sorts of stuff in it, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
So I was going to, in the large traditional kilns, usually for a couple of weeks, then they'll rest, and then they'll be somewhere for a couple of months, and then I'll go back in the kiln for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
These are massive things, like the size of this room.
Mm-hmm.
Then before we process them, as in we start going into making guitars, we put them in a thermo kiln and do a process that we all know as torrefaction.
Just to be clear, it's just the top, isn't it? It's not the back and sides, yeah?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So we put our tops in. Some people in the world, like Dana Bourgeois, who's probably one of the most knowledgeable, I think, certainly he seems to have baked more or talked about baking more than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I think he does tops, backs. I think he even does necks. We've never put sort of rosewoods and stuff like that in there. We have put mahogany in there. We have put some necks in there before.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, as a standard process for our guitars, all our solid tops are thermo kilned before processing. What we don't do is turn our guitars into things like where other manufacturers are going for that vintage sound.
Yeah.
We don't do that, because to cook that high, we don't do.
Because the more you dial up the temperature, the more it's well, we'll get into that, but it changes.
It changes. So this one hasn't been baked.
Mm-hmm.
This one was baked at to 95 degrees C, which I think is about 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And this one was baked to 150 degrees Celsius, which is probably close to 300 or plus
Mm-hmm.
Fahrenheit. For the guys who are going for that vintage tone, they're cooking 200, 250 degrees C plus like 400. It's very hot.
It's incredible.
Incredible. And you need a very clever computerized oven to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously not burn the wood
Yeah.
or set it on fire,
Yeah.
because you don't want to play charcoal-y guitars. So thermo kilns are not just, we'll get into why they're called thermos, they're clever things. They're computerized. There's different processes go on throughout the curing to protect the wood and be able to cook it to such a high degree without damaging the wood and getting out all these things.
Right.
So people, say getting out all these things. So I know that you've done some reading on this.
I have done some reading on this, and it is quite fascinating.
So like people say, thermokiln torrefaction, it removes sugars, saps, volatiles. You'll see the
Yeah.
word volatiles
Yeah.
used a lot. What is
VOCs?
VOCs, which is a volatile organic compound.
Right.
So inside wood, there is shed loads of stuff. When the wood is chopped, there's all sorts in there. There's alcohols and all these chemical compounds, and a lot of them are gassy or wet. So and they're things that are trapped in walls of cells and all that sort of stuff that you can't remove unless there's some very clever heating going on. And what's a fascinating thing is, I think Dana Bourgeois talks about, is that he stumbled across this when somebody talked to him about people counterfeiting violins.
Yes.
Counterfeiting violins. So they're trying to sell a Stradivarius or something.
Yeah.
First-
Which is like what, 300 or 400-year-old, maybe even more.
Yeah.
Wood. Incredibly. I
Yeah.
mean, it's solidified, doesn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. Crystallized.
Crystallized.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, when people try to counterfeit expensive violins and try and sell them for something that maybe they're not, this process was stumbled across. I think it actually comes from Vikings torrefying wood for their ships, and then there was things called gasifiers in the early 19th century that people used for different engineering. But basically, it's drying to get rid of these volatiles or anything else that dampens the wood.
Yeah.
Even if you're making fuel, you want it super dry. You torrefy that biomass,
Yes.
so it burns better, quicker, longer,
Mm-hmm.
all that sort of stuff. So, but people were counterfeiting violins. Found this process that's accelerating the aging, because that's what a guitar does over time.
Yeah.
The lignins, we'll get into lignins, harden, come crystallize, almost bone-like. So there was a test from people trading violins that if you shone a light through the back of the top, you couldn't see the light if it was indeed an ancient, very old violin.
Yeah. But if you shine a light through a piece of wood that's full of moisture,
you can see it.
Yeah.
Because it'll cut through that.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens when you torrefy is the lignin, which is like the glue, it's part of the cell, it's part of all that compound.
Yeah.
In torrefaction, hardens.
That's right.
Actually, the cell walls start to break down.
The cells are breaking down, and then
Correct.
it becomes more dense.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you get your nice term.
Oh, oh my goodness, I've gone hydroskosicity.
Hygrospecicity or scicicity.
Hydroskosicity or something.
like that.
Hydroscopicity, I think, or something.
So
someone will tell us.
Yeah, please do. So you get this. So your lignin, it crystallizes. It becomes hard. And as soon as you think about that, you think about tone. I do anyway.
Yeah.
So you've got all this moisture trapped in the cells of the wood or the walls of the cells that when you bake in a thermal kiln, you're able to get out. What I think people don't do, and this is my understanding of how thermal kilns work. I haven't seen people sort of diving into that. But inside a thermal kiln, there's lots of clever stuff going on. It's not just heat. So there's three processes. The first process is the heat. So basically you gradually take the heat up. So the tops we put in there are in there for 48 hours. And this process lasts 48 hours.
Right.
And you take the heat up. And as you take the heat up, you use steam. Steam is released. And that stops the wood from cracking under the heat. So you keep some, obviously steam is moisture, so you're keeping some stuff in there. But the heat gets so high that you're starting to gasify these volatiles, these VOCs, these organic compounds are disappearing. They're turning into gas or they're drying out. And the lignin, so I don't think the lignin part has started yet. These are the volatiles being exhausted, if you like.
Okay.
Then, after this process, the oxygen is taken out of the oven, and there is a spike of very high temperature. And during that part of the process is the change in the lignin starts to become crystallized. The oven is clever enough, it's programmed to know that how long it can do that for with regard to what temperature you're setting at. And I'm not sure, somebody else can tell me, maybe it then releases steam in and then maybe it goes through the process again.
Yeah.
But it's basically three processes. It's heat, really, really high temperatures with steam to stop the wood from checking and cracking. And then the oxygen is taken out so you can spike that temperature without setting the wood on fire.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And removing the oxygen allows you to do that.
Yeah.
And in that spike is where you start getting that modification of cellular structure.
Right.
That's what I believe.
Right.
Could be wrong. But it's not just a matter of you got this clever oven and you whack it up. There's a lot of going on.
It's not just about heating it up so things happen.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because actually, some people talk about in that process where you've got heat and steam and then things are being removed, there's actually lots of minute vibration going on. The things start breaking down and things start getting released. It's really clever. Then the third process is the cooling. So your wood may go in, could be 15-20% moisture content. The first process, the heating process, is going to take that right down. Probably after you stop the steam, could be zero. There could be no moisture in the wood. Then after that, you take the oxygen out, you spike it, the modification starts happening. And then that cooling process, I'm presuming some steam is used in that, because when the wood comes out, you can program the kiln that when the wood comes back out, or it's ready, it has about 6 to 8% moisture content. And that's what you want.
Some moisture is put back in.
Correct. You often take wood to zero.
Right.
You can do that in traditional kilns. And if you allow, there's like a natural point, especially for spruce. If that's in like 45, 50%, a humidified room of 45 to 50%, then it's say something like 18 to 25 degrees. Spruce likes to sit about 8% moisture content. It naturally sits at that in its favourable environment, which is very temperate. So that's the process. It's heat, steam, oxygen out, bang, spike, modification happens, and then it's cooling off. And I'm not quite sure in the cooling off process, I guess, whether the wood just takes on whatever moisture is left, but it comes out about 6 to 8%, which is what spruce likes to be at. And then throughout production, you try and keep the wood at that natural sort of moisture content that it likes. So when you're doing, say, jointing or bracing, you're in a climate controlled environment, which is usually middle humidity. We're about 20 degrees centigrade. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but we can look it up. And that's where spruce just likes to sit, 6 to 8% moisture content. Because if you take it out of that environment, which happens when the guitar is finished and you ship them around the world, guitars move these days. They never used to move like they move now. Yeah. That's when they start misbehaving. So this process stops that.
And was that the original thinking behind it?
Yeah, because if you think about it, you've taken a lot of the stuff that's very sensitive out of the cell of the wood.
Yeah.
And you've also hardened or started the process, the crystallization of the lignin. So it's not going to take on moisture, and it's not going to release moisture like it used to. Yes. That's gone forever. And that's what vintage guitars, I'm not so sold on the vintage guitar thing, because some vintage guitars sound great and some don't.
Because they've gone too far.
There's many reasons. There's many, many reasons. I don't want to get in the tonal thing, because that's subjective anyway. But for us, when we started doing this, like between January and March, the phone rings, guitars buzzing, the neck's, something wrong with the neck. There's never anything wrong with the neck, it's the top that's moved. If we hadn't have done this process, or before we did this process, the cell is raw, right? The cell has not, all that stuff that we take, all those volatiles and saps that can release in dryness very quickly, or it can take on more. You've limited its ability to do that. So the guitar is very stable. Yeah. But the first year we started using kiln, which is 6-7 years ago or something, we were waiting for the phone to ring in January. No calls. Didn't. It was like magic. And I'm not saying that our guitars are impermeable to, no guitars are. No wood is. It's an open, elastic material. Yeah. But they are far more resilient because of this process. So there's stability and there's tonal benefits if you want that kind of tone.
But it is incredibly subtle.
These are very subtle.
These are particularly. I think we'll do some recording to hear them.
But we've cooked 95 and 150 degrees C. If these, we don't cook to sort of 250 degrees like other people do centigrade. So the difference between these guitars are very subtle, but we're not going for that vintage thing. Yeah. People can write about the tonal benefits. We want stability. But without doubt, you pick up a top that's come out of the oven to a top that hasn't been in, and the weight is totally different because you've got all that wet stuff out of there, right? It's heavy, and that is a dampener. It's a dampening the tone. Yeah. All of a sudden, you've got this light thing, which is more hard and rigid. It makes sense, like frequencies and response is better.
And the whole resonance and the whole ability to carry the note.
Yeah, all that. And more clarity, there's more separation because you haven't got this sort of dampening, sort of wetter, heavier board. You've got this light, agile thing, and it impacts the tone. So we call it ATR, Advanced Tonal Response, because we're advancing that aging process, and you get a response in tonality and certainly sort of what I feel is like a quickness to the instruments. The vintage thing is something else. I don't know much about that. People say they can dial in 1930s, 1940s style instruments, and I've played vintage instruments that are mediocre. I've played some which are unbelievably wonderful, and I've played highly torrefied instruments, trying to emulate those, and some of them are wonderful and some of them aren't. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, where do you go with that really? But torrefaction is cooking wood under these days with computerized thermal kilns in a process that hardens lignins, removes volatiles, which are volatile organic compounds that dampen or in our case limit the performance of wood. Any good?
Smashing. Good explanation.
But please,
Thank you.
you know, if you do, you know, if you're more scientific than us, for example, because we're not very scientific, you know, jump into the comments.
You did all right there.
Did all right?
I think you did pretty well.
Not too bad. Will A, B, and C these?
Yeah.
But the difference is very, very slight because we don't cook to 250 plus.
Yeah.
So you'll hear you can see this is slightly darker than the other two.
Well, that's one of the things, isn't
Yeah.
it? That so torrefaction actually
can darken the wood.
can
yeah.
darken the wood. Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly, if you're cooking 250ish, you're definitely
Yeah.
going to see some change there for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
We'll,
Great stuff.
We'll put these in front of the mics and we'll see if we can hear the slight difference.
Nice one.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button and consider subscribing to our channel. If you want to watch more videos like this one, click the video on the screen now.